Welcome to the Lovecars on the Grid podcast, your global motorsport roundup with me, Tiff, Needell and Paul Woodman.
Welcome to Lovecars on the Grid, your global motorsport podcast roundup. This week we're going to have a look, start in the USA with IMSA, and we're going to have a look all around the world. Well, two locations, but it's quite exciting locations with a roundup of BSB at Brands Hatch. We're going to also look at the Indonesian GP, and then we're going to end up back in the USA with NASCAR, Tiff's favourite. And it's getting exciting there. It's getting very exciting down to the wire again. But we're going to start off with the news. There's loads of going on in motorsport. I quite like the story. I'm a bit disappointed, I'll be honest. The story about Nigel Mansell selling all of his memorabilia and stuff.
No.
But what do you do? I mean, I would have thought that he would want to keep it or give it to his children. I guess there's only so much you can do. But
one of the rumours is he's a bit short, had a couple of bad business investments. I don't know. I mean, he's heading, I think, to Florida. I think he wants to end up in America. So I think he's shutting down all his, which is he, Jersey or Guernsey, wherever he is, Channel Island stuff, and closing his museum. I think he's moving lock, stock and barrel. That's what I've heard through the grapevine to America to live. Because he sold his Williams and his Ferrari. I mean, he let those two go for about $3 million each. And he's picked up a couple of million now for all his overalls and crash helmets and stuff, which is great because it's justified to my wife. I do keep all that junk in the attic because I'm sure it's going to be worth at least 200 quid in about 10 years' time. I've still got my Le Mans boots and Le Mans overalls and crash helmets. So anyone out there wants to get a bid in early, 200 quid should cover the lot. So he just seems to be selling up lock, stock and barrel. I mean, it's great for fans of his that can grab a bit of his history and wear their overalls. I don't know what they do with his caps and stuff. That most of them look quite new suits, like just replica hats. But the few I think that had provenance and actually the overalls he wore at a British Grand Prix. I mean, that's always good for enthusiasts. So. Yep, so Nigel, that was most amusing news. The news was amusing all round. We talk millions everywhere because, of course, Bernie's had to cough up. It's not a lot, really. Admitted guilty. The fact that he forgot that he had £400 million stashed in Singapore. And because he's admitted guilty to forgetting to mention in a tax inquisition that he's had to cough up £600 million of tax from the last 18 years. It's the fact that he has obviously got 600 million to pay, but good old Bernie. I always love Bernie. God, he's about 92 now.
He is 92. And, it's incredible because his birthday is 2 decades after you, within give or take a couple of days, and Derek's is a decade after you.
10 years, so it's both all Octobers. Me, Derek, and then Bernie. I've always enjoyed Bernie. I mean, he's come out with some ridiculous statements over the time. But he's always just thrown rocks into a pond to see where the waves went. And
fair play to him. He says it how it is. He doesn't.
Yeah, I know.
When you're a multi-billionaire and I guess you can afford to say things how they are a little bit, but 92 years of age and having to cough up your kids' inheritance, where I'm sure they'll do all right. So that's Bernie. What else have you got in the news? I got a little bit
Belgian Grand Prix. Whoop! They've given a 1-year extension as they signed Qatar for 10 years because the money is there. Poor old Belgium hasn't got much money. That circuit and that race was actually owned by Bernie's wife for a while, Mrs. Eccleston, the first or second, not the current one. So I'm not sure who owns Bell, but obviously they haven't got the money. But they have given Spa 1 year. So it's got 2 more years of Spa guaranteed. What have you got next?
Well, nothing really. I did have a little laugh at Jade Edwards, who we're a big fan of, and Abby Eaton, big fan of her as well. They were a little bit tongue-in-cheek about Ollie Bierman's testing. Well, not testing, his going to Ferrari. They're a little sarky,
weren't they? Yeah.
Because what were his lap times comparatively to, of course, their very good friend, Jessica. Oh, crikey. I got your disease.
Jessica Hawkins.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Jess. Yeah. Because I'm a big fan of Jess as well. But look, I hate to burst anyone's bubble because we are massive fans of Jess, Jade, Abby, all the girls out there. But Ollie Bierman is a different. He's a different.
I know it's a different. I think the boys were saying, she only got the drive because she's a girl, and so they're trying to say we only got the drive because he's a boy. And I don't know. I didn't really read much of it.
It was a bit of handbags. I don't. I'm probably not allowed to say that anymore because that sounds really
can't say that. I know. Well, for Alpine have quietly, this anti-Andretti from FOM, because Alpine have suddenly said, oh, by the way, that promise to give Alpine engines, that deal ran out last January that Andretti had in their original proposals, that they had Alpine engines lined up. And Alpine have quick, no, they haven't. Then this battle between FIA and FOM is growing and growing, because the FIA now have come out and said they will have an engine because Rule 56BC Focus says that the bottom two engine suppliers have to give an engine to any new team. So I'm going to cough. I need to cough. Where's my microphone? I can't cough.
I've muted him. Sorry, ladies, gentlemen, and whatever else from wherever. Can I put you back on now? Yes. So, ask to unmute. Oh, you've got it unmute. Well, that. What? There we go. He's unmuted.
Right, I had to cough. So I was saying, yes. So Alpine have said they're not going to give engines to Andretti, and the FIA have now bounced back and said, well, the rules say that someone has to. The two manufacturers of the least number of engines on the grid have to offer engines to a new team. So that's been handbags going on. We've had the Lewis crossing the road is going to be looked at by the FIA because they've decided that was more serious than they thought at first. They gave him a $50,000 fine for crossing the road after he crashed at turn 1 in Qatar, which of course is about £5 to him. So £5 for crossing the road probably doesn't really make much difference. But everyone's now pointing out they're picking on Lewis because Logan Sargent, of course, walked across the track in Japan after he crashed in qualifying, and he didn't get a big fine. So anyway, they're always trying to make a fuss. So it's more Formula One fuss.
But it's not. It's not picking on Lewis. It's just the way. It's just the way it goes.
Just reading a bit of Twitter rubbish that goes round and
if you're worried about Lewis being able to afford it, which I'm sure the team pay anyway, in terms of highest paid drivers, Lewis is second to Max. So Max apparently salary, not all endorsement stuff, $55 million a year. Lewis $35 million, and then most of the others are sort of 20, 10, 8. So. He's got a few quid, yeah.
He got fined £5 for crossing the road in his money. And then the whole Qatar heat exhaustion, that story rumbles on and on because everyone's saying, Fernando Alonso said we'd have to delay the start of a race if it's too hot. For God, it's bad enough delaying starts for rain and TV schedules and us wanting to watch it. Now, how long are you going to wait for the heat? So. And, we've bounced back and I've said, well, they have to have cool suits, so they have to sort out cooled air tubes that I've had when I was racing in the past, but of course that adds weight. And so the engineers of Formula One hate it. But then Jenson Button's come in with an interesting angle because he almost had to retire from his NASCAR race at Circuit of Americas when he got too heat, was overheated, and they hadn't got the cooling in his car sorted. And so he points out really heat is the one thing, but the other issue is G-forces. And a few other people have said, well, of course, Qatar has got, it's a big G track. So you not only got the heat, you've got it combined with the G-forces. So I sort of said, well, as long as you get rid of the heat, then they're trained to handle the G-forces. But apparently it's an excessive G-force. There's a combination of one of the most G-force tracks and the heat. So I'm now quickly adding in, well, if that's the case, that gives the FIA permission to say your circuit is too dangerous to drive on because it's got too many corners. So it'll finally give me a safety reason. Because, it's a flipping, what's his name, Tilke track. And I think Tilke hates any straight lines. If you look on a circuit map, there's a straight line longer than half an inch on his map. It's got to have a squiggle in it. Because, of course, some of those, Qatar corners, it was just a straight between turn 6 and turn 10 that he's put swerves in. So, of course, the driver's got G-force left, G-force right. There's no overtaking. There's no skill. They're just sitting under G-force for no reason at all. So if, as Button says, it's the G-force as well then let's go over all the tracks where I can get lots of rulers out and go from turn 6 to 10, miss out all that stupid bit. It would save the G-force, therefore this exhaustion problem. They think we can't live with exhaustion. It's dangerous to live with exhaustion, not just heat, it's G-force. Let's just cut a few corners and that will give a straight and maybe an overtaking opportunity, perhaps, might I dare suggest. So lots all kicking off. Heat, exhaustion. Heat's been with us for ages. I mean, I've suffered my own heat story, which the public might not.
Please, not the
wish
buttons
to know.
one.
Well,
please, not the buttons one.
I don't know if I've told it before, but yes, the buttocks one, because Heat's been with racing drivers since the day it was born, and I was racing a brand new Toyota factory Group C car around Fuji, and we hardly tested the car before the race. And it was a very low Group C car. And as normal, many of my racing career with single seaters, I end up sitting on the floors of cars and then have the seat around my back
because you're so tall.
Yeah. So this was typical. I was bolted to the aluminium floor of this Group C car, tight as my belt's very tight as all racing drivers do. We hadn't done many laps of the car and testing, and we qualified quite well. But I was at the first hour of the race, first stint, and after about 20 minutes, it's getting hot in this car. And in particular, my bottom was getting very hot. And Alonso was complaining about his seat getting hot. Now, this wasn't the seat. This was the floor of the car. And gradually the heat just grew and grew and grew as the stint went on. It was about a 50-degree, about 40-degree temperature outside anyway, and about 70 inside. So I adopted the racing driver's favourite tactic at this stage. That you always, when you finish a lap, you then say to yourself, well, if I managed to finish, I couldn't move. My belts were really tight. You say, well, I've finished this lap. Can I do one more? Yeah, yes, of course you can, Tiff. So I did one more. And then you finish that one more lap. You've got 20 to go. If I'd done one more, I could do one more. But the pain was increasing rapidly. But incredibly luckily, one of the rear wheel, the whole rim broke coming through the very fast, almost flat out final corner on the old Fuji layout. Magnificent fast corner. So the rear left wheel departing company, sending me spinning into the barrier. And never have been happier in my life to retire from a race. Because I undid the belts, leapt out of the car. It was badly damaged, but I wasn't injured. Ran across the track, being fined £50,000 if I'd been Lewis Hamilton. So I knew the medical centre was just opposite the exit of the last corner, right where I crashed. So I clambered over the barriers into the medical centre and leapt onto the couch with all the Japanese girls laughing away as I ripped my suit off and exposed my very pink buttocks. And it turned out that it was a brand new aluminium monocoque, rear engine Group C car with an aluminium radiator to the front, aluminium piping from the radiator to the front to the edge of the back, which then clamped to the aluminium monocoque with aluminium brackets. So there was no sealant between the heat of the water and the monocoque. So the monocoque was gradually getting up to the temperature of the water, which is like 70 or 80 degrees. Hence, I've been sitting on a frying pan and had first-degree burns on my buttocks.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I'm sure
it was
viewers are delighted
very
to hear
long
that story.
trip home on the aeroplane, all the way from Japan back.
To try and get that image out of our heads.
Yes,
I was just going to ask you. You was complaining about Qatar, the circuit. What is the best racing circuit on the Formula One calendar of the year? Where a lot of the older, the natural flowing circuits, which haven't been mucked about with too many chicane, but Sao Paulo, Brazil, and that's always a great track. There's always good racing there. I'd have to go. I'm not quite sure if I'd go back through them all. Silverstone?
You caught me out. Yeah, Silverstone. But no, Silverstone again.
Lots of runoff.
It's all DRS. There's too many corners. When that redesign came, I was so... The original redesign, as a BRDC member who owned Silverstone Circuit, we saw the first draft, and it went round the final corner, club corner, where we now have the garages, and then went straight all the way to the club straight, and then did a hairpin left to begin the drive down to Brooklands and the BRDC complex. So I thought, brilliant, really long straight, hairpin at the end of it. And also, when you have the longer straights, like some circuits, you have a lower downforce setup, which helps less G-force in the corners because it's quicker to have less drag, so you have a faster car. And then, of course, when it came out with the final product, there was a squiggly bit and two hairpins, at 5 corners where there weren't any. So I don't know where else. Where is the good racing? It's very hard if I can't. You've caught me out.
Spa?
But certainly. Yeah, Spa's usually pretty good. You have to have at least 2 overtaking opportunities per lap. This is what you're really looking for. When Qatar, most of the Tilka tracks, it's just the one straight. And then you've got to wait. So if you haven't done the overtake, you then sit beside someone for the rest of the lap. So you need this sort of, a third of the circuit, which ends in a long straight before a corner, then another third, which ends with a long straight before a corner. So at least you have 2 or 3 times a lap to overtake. I mean, Monza's got it, but then the chicanes are horrible.
Or smaller cars, because In proper racing, there's so many more opportunities to. When I say proper racing, I mean like Caterham or Ford car or. There's so many more opportunities to overtake because the cars are that much smaller, and you can...
the weight, the braking power is so good. You're heavyweight, but incredibly short braking distances, and 2 meter long, 3 meter long cars. How long are they? 4 meters, aren't they?
5 meters. Things. 5 meter long. Unbelievable. The same presence, size as a Rolls-Royce Phantom.
Yeah, the Rolls-Royce.
That's how big they are. What else you got in the news? Anything else, or should we move on?
No, that was also the Formula One. The heat story rolls on, crossing roads.
I'll tell you what else it was. Bit of gossip this week, about Perez as well. He's got to be on his way out.
Oh yes,
he's got to be on his way out. People are asking
they're encouraging him to retire. That's the latest thing. Yeah, there's a lot of journalists now saying the only way out of this, Checo, is to retire gracefully. Otherwise, you're going to get sacked. Either retire. Also, there's a bit of a press as well. That's the other news. There was more news. I've got it written down here because a lot of journalists are saying, well, hold on a minute, Mr. Stroll. If you're being serious that Aston Martin is going to be a world championship, vying team, I must say, Mr. Stroll, you have to sack Mr. Stroll. And pressure is coming, I think, very much on the Stroll family that he can't keep on pretending that he's got a serious race team when the boy is still in a seat. So, there's quite a lot of gossip going on.
So
anyway,
Perez is probably not going to be here at the end of the season, and Christian Horner, he kept stum as always, but he did say some nice words about Liam Lawson as well. So as you would, because Liam's done incredibly well. So hopefully he will get a seat.
Well, he may well do. Maybe I don't know which would you say? I think if Perez keeps falling apart, I think is it going to Ricciardo in with Verstappen and Lawson with AlphaTauri, or would he put Lawson straight against Verstappen? You reckon Ricciardo against
Ricciardo 100%, because Verstappen knows he's absolutely got him on toast as well, and Red Bull, everybody loves Ricciardo. So but he will be exposed. He will be exposed big time if he's up against Verstappen. But there you go. News from around the world, and let's go to USA IMSA. Where was IMSA? Where it was?
It's fabulous. It's Petit Le Mans, the Road Atlanta track, one of probably the second best road course in the world after Road America. A wonderful flowing, dipping track, and this famous Petit Le Mans, the 10-hour race that starts at about midday and ends at 10 p.m. Has about 2 hours of darkness at the end of the race. Watch on IMSA on the IMSA.com. You have the whole race and great commentary. We've got Jeremy Shaw, the English journalist, lives in America now, really good, knowledgeable journalist. And of course, alongside him, the graceful tones of the Mackem, don't call him a Geordie, Hindhoff, John Hindhoff, who sounds just like a Geordie to me. Oh, I didn't say that, John, honest. Great commentary. They've got so much knowledge, and they let the race go. But it's becoming a bit of a show too much. We saw it at Le Mans this year, because the Americans always had this realign everybody in class order. And the Daytona 24-hour races, always you end up with a sprint for half an hour. And they're talking about this Road Atlanta IMSA being a 9.5-hour qualifying session to get yourself in position for a half-hour sprint. Because every yellow flag, it goes full course yellow, everybody pits, and then you get realigned in your class order at the front. So you've got the GTP cars, then you've got LMP2 cars, LMP3 cars. And they did this at Le Mans. It takes 20 or 25 minutes for everybody to get reassembled. But the point is that there's no point in grafting out a 10-second lead, because the first time was a full course yellow, the bloke that you've just worked so hard to get a 10-second lead for is now behind you, and off you go again.
Which, as you said, happened in Le Mans all the time.
Only this year they did it for the first time. They've copied the American system. And I really don't, because the idea before was if it's a full course yellow, then you have to make that decision. If you pit now, you're going to come out the back of a crocodile. So, there's a gamble there. But I think because once or twice, a car got a lapse lead accidentally, because unfortunately the pace car came out just at the wrong moment. One car gets given a 1-lap lead, and then the race is over. But that didn't happen all that often in my knowledge. Was now, nobody can work a lead. You can go for 9.5 hours of grafting away in an endurance race. But then with half an hour to go, you look behind you, and the 5 cars are on your gearbox. So I'm not a fan of that system. They've gone too far. It works in NASCAR and IndyCar, where short races and they refuel. And I just don't think it works with the sports cars. They need to have that endurance element to them. But it's still a spectacle. I mean, when you see all those cars,
what do you think should happen then? Do you think just to go back to how
the same as it used to be? Yeah, when a safety car comes out, they try to get the leader. And they wave past cars they've accidentally pinched. They try to a few wave bys. Then once the crocodile's going, you open the pit lane, and then it's your choice if you pit or not. And if you're in a prototype and 20 GTs don't pit, you'll come out behind 20 GTs.
Yeah,
that's the way of the world that it always used to be. So I'm not a fan of what they're doing there. But as I said, great. These new sports cars are spectacular.
I love them.
There's going to be more of them.
I love them.
Porsches and Cadillacs and Acuras. But it was spectacular. So there wasn't that, but it was, in the end, the controversy all came about an hour and a half before the end of the race. A big moment. Because the battle for the championship was between the Cadillac, which Pippo Durrani was driving at the time, was battling with Philippe Albuquerque in the Acura. And they were dicing. These were the two that were going for the championship title. And I think they were dicing for second. I thought they were dicing for the lead. I read a report they were. Anyway, whatever. It was just after a restart, and Albuquerque was trying to get by Durrani, which would have meant the championship turning in their favour. And Durrani got held up down the straight before turn one, which is a very, very fast right-hand uphill that leads to a left-hand over a crest. Wonderful corner. And Albuquerque tried to go around the outside. He actually got his nose ahead. And now we're into that new zone where you have to leave room for a car on the outside. But then if you're on the inside and you brake as late as possible, you might not be able to pull it any tighter. Because in the end, I think it was a slight touch, and Albuquerque got shouldered, went off just in the dark as well, and had a big shunt into the barrier. I think he hurt his leg or something a little bit. So that put them out of the race. That was the end of the challenge from the Acura. And Pippo Durrani went on to win the championship, along with Alexander Sims, the British driver, and another British driver, Jack Aitken, was also there. So good news for the Brits that Durrani gave them a bit of nudge. But the stewards looked at it and said, no, it was a racing incident. And I think they were right to say that. But we are getting a bit obsessed with this. You have to leave room on the outside when sometimes you just can't do it. But whether Pippo Durrani, Brazilian. So that was a sort of the drama at the end.
But shouldn't you always be in control of your car?
Well, yeah, I suppose Durrani could have lifted off a bit and pulled tighter. I mean, I agree. Albuquerque was factually ahead. So I actually agree this time that Durrani should have maybe been given a penalty, because always hard to judge.
It's a tough one, and no two situations are the same. It is a tough one, but I agree. Stewards sound like they got it right on that one.
Yeah. But in the end, the race was run by another Acura, which of course is Honda to us.
Honda.
Tom Blomqvist, British driver, was one of the three winners. That was good news from Britain. Other British drivers, Harry Tinkner was third in a Porsche. Some bloke called Jenson Button was fifth in a Porsche. But the championship, as I said, went to Durrani and Sims, and Jack Aitken. Their car finished sixth in the end. So spectacular, but slightly annoying with all those pace cars. But always, you could turn on the telly for half an hour, and it was just brilliant to watch. Because there's so much overtaking.
That's one good thing about it. If you don't watch the whole thing and you only turn the TV on now and again, you just see loads of racing, like wheel-to-wheel racing, which is
great commentary, very informative commentary, which is what you need. Even though Mackham John, when he gets shouty a bit, he's still. There's a way of shouting without it being annoying. You know what I mean? It's not just a. The Moto GP boys are great because suddenly went mental at the weekend. No, it wasn't a British Superbike. It suddenly went mental for the last corner. Up to gear. Sometimes those commentators, they comment and then they just think it's time to go to volume 11.
I like to think that my shouting is not annoying, Tiff, because I do get a bit excited sometimes.
You just swear when you get excited. You just swear all the time.
that shows my brain. I've got no vocabulary.
A couple of other notes from Road Atlanta. As I said, entertaining every time you watch. It ended with a car on fire because they had a restart with about 3 laps to go, and everyone was just going mental, banging into each other, trying to get another place. But Ben Hanley was part of the British driver. Ben Hanley, part of the LMP2 winning team. And on our Promoter Women platform, a real star I hadn't heard of. She's with the Iron Dames in a Lambo. A young 19-year-old Doriane Pain. She won the Ferrari Challenge Europe I think it was last year, winning like 10 of the 14 races. And she was in a Lamborghini, Iron Dames Lamborghini, was leading outright, leading all those GT superstar young lads, boys, men,
Brilliant.
all of them outright. And the car got into some problems, they were pitted and they fell back, and I think the car had some troubles. So get her in a single-seater. I think she did a Formula 3 test a couple of years ago, but obviously a real talent as a driver. But at the moment, doing GTs.
I don't know who the third is, but Sarah Bovey, I know. She's fast as well.
Yes, the Iron Dames trio. Iron Dames are doing a fantastic job for women in motorsport, but we need that woman in a Grand Prix car, a single-seater. And talking of women winning, Vicky Piria, our own Vicky, had a class win in her Porsche GT3. She's racing in the Italian GT Championship. They had a class win. They were 9th overall out of the 20 cars on the track, so still good position. And she says that Porsche 993 with Kiko Galbiati. So ciao, Vicky. Congratulations with Kiko. So she won her class. So that was good stuff.
Good.
So that was the GT news.
Let's go to two wheels. Let's go to Indonesia.
Oh, what a wonder! So now we're now in my world. So it was Saturday night until 2 o'clock in the morning. Was keeping in touch with Road Atlanta. And then almost as soon as that ended, if you wanted to stay awake, it was over down to Indonesia, where during the early hours of Sunday morning, the Moto GP teams were all racing. Welcoming back Susie Perry, who's been off ill for about 3 or 4 races we missed her for. So it was wonderful to see Susie back and smiling. And again, talking of commentary teams, I mean, her and Neil Hodgson. Neil's brilliant at the sort of the expert analysis, and the commentary team is also, really on top and good. It's a wonderful presentation. Great. So when the information comes on with a bit of jokey, funny, they have banter with each other, and that's what you need.
They know, Tiff, they know it inside out. They know apps. They've been doing it.
They know. They're not just presenters or commentators. They're sports lovers. They love their sport. And that's what Murray Walker was so good at. Murray Walker, his history of his motorsport behind him made him. And of course, Murray's would have been, what is it, his 100th birthday would have been. Would have been 100, bless him. I was sure he's going to make 100. I was convinced. But the Moto GP, great stories right the way through, because of course we've got this season where Jorge Martin, the Spaniard, has been catching hand over fist at his private Pramac Ducati, catching the factory bike of Pecco Bagnaia. And he shot through to win the sprint race, which was on the day before, the Saturday, which put him actually the lead of the championship for the first time. So Jorge Martin just dominating the bike world. He only qualified 6th, and Pecco Bagnaia was 11th. The Indonesian track was very tricky. I think there's some rain showers, and the problem was it was very dusty and dirty. There was a very narrow line, and if you went off the line, you're on dust and a very green track. So it was a very tricky circuit. In the sprint race, they say, as I said, he won it. He was chased home by the 2 more satellite Ducatis, the Valentino Rossi's pairing of Luca Marini, who was on pole position, and Marco Bezzecchi, who came from 9th on the grid in the sprint race to finish 3rd, having broken his collarbone 1 week earlier, had an operation on his collarbone, I think on the Monday or Tuesday, woke up on Wednesday morning and said, it's not too bad, decided he would fly to Indonesia. And when he got to Indonesia on the Thursday, he thought, maybe I'll ride the bike a little bit. And took it easy in qualifying, came from 9th to finish 3rd.
Hang on a minute. Well, you're missing out something. He didn't take it easy in qualifying, because in FP1, he had a big crash. He skidded all along the floor.
Well, and I forgot about that. He did fall off as well.
Because he made a great statement. He said, as soon as I was sliding, I burnt my ass trying not to hit my arm.
That's 2 burnt bottoms in one show we're talking about now.
What is he made of to be doing that?
I know.
Different gravy.
Anyway, so 4th and 5th of the sprint race for Maverick Vinales, Aprilia, and then Fabio Quartararo was having a good weekend for Yamaha, former world champion, whereas Marc Marquez, the other former world champion superstar, who's suffering with his Honda, he's dreaming with Ducati. Now he's signed for a satellite Ducati next year. He crashed his Honda in the sprint race, and he crashed his Honda in the main race, the Grand Prix. So poor old Marc. I just hope he doesn't injure himself again before he gets on a Ducati. So now on to the Grand Prix, which was on early in the hours of Sunday morning. And Jorge Martin, they said he had a new start device on his Ducati. I don't understand why he did and others didn't as well. But he just launched from 6th into the lead at the first corner. Just they're like drag bikes. I was talking to someone at Goodwood, one of the bike boys, and he says it lowers the ride height by about 4 inches. And they're just
Higgs told us that as well from BSB.
Yeah. So he was then out leading, thinking, well, this is it, this dominant, amazing comeback. He's just going to walk to the title now. And he dropped it. Out front, dropped it. There was a bit of a build-up to all this because the tyres were overheating badly. The track was really hot. And who are the tyre people? It's French mob, isn't it?
Michelin.
Yeah, Michelin. They actually came out with a warning to all riders: do not use the soft tyre in the race. It was that bad. And of course, it's amazing bikes. They've got a soft, a medium, and a hard, and they can have either of the three, any of the three on the front, and any of the three on the back. So you have soft fronts, hard backs, hard fronts. I think Bezzecchi had Bagnaia had hards all round. Others had a soft front and a medium rear. So they're all riding on a bit of a tentative, how hard do we push early on because of this tyre situation. You don't want your tyres to disappear on you. And Martin said that he ran a bit wide on a previous corner, and he thinks he then got a bit of dirt, a little bit of dust on his front tyre, went to turn into the next turn, boof, down he goes. Championship leader, race leader. We talk about this every time on bikes. And down he went. So he was out of the race.
It shows how much they're on the edge, doesn't it?
I know. It's just incredible. But I mean, there were, I think, 7 out of the 21 riders, 6 crashed out. So 6 people also went, 5 others went down.
In a dry race. This is not a wet race,
dry
by
race.
the way.
Yeah. Martini, who was on pole position, Marini, was hit by Brad Binder, and he actually pulled into the pits to retire. So he didn't actually fall. Binder got penalised for that attack. So they were falling like flies. But then ended up with a fantastic. Then it became one of the best Grand Prix we've had for a while. It came down to 3 riders all go for the lead because it was Vinales was leading on his Aprilia, and then Bagnaia. I can't remember which one Bagnaia. Yes, Bagnaia then came through to take the lead. He was on hard tyres all round. Remember Fabio Quartararo that had the soft tyre on the front. I'm pretty sure I saw the graphics. I haven't got this wrong because they said don't use the soft tyre; it won't last the race. He caught Vinales. We had these 3 bikes for the last 4 or 5 laps just at it. No one overtook anyone. They don't have to make it a good race. They crossed the line, all covered by about half a second. Bagnaia goes back into the championship. It was just really good racing and spectacular to watch, as always.
So did you know?
So the battle goes on.
Do you know this stat, which I find quite amazing? This is not my stat. It's motorsport.com. Pecco Bagnaia is the first rider to win a dry MotoGP race from outside the front 4 rows for over 18 years, 17 years. 2000, yeah, first time.
Because he was 11th on the grid, wasn't he? Yeah.
13th, I think. I think he was 13th. But
he
P13 to P1. And he's the first time ever from outside the front 10 that someone's won since 2006 on a dry race, Yeah. He's
that
class.
was quite a ride.
They're brilliant. I love those boys, and I love the BSB boys as well. Where we're heading next to brand.
Well, Moto 2. You just catch up. More news, of course, because it's not just a Grand Prix like in Formula 1. You get 3 championships, 3 races. Moto 2, which always tends to be the tamest of the 3. Again, they worry about tyres. Pedro Costa, having got by Aaron Canet early on, the championship leader, increased his lead even further by winning. Leading a Spanish 1, 2, 3, Canet second, and Fermin Aldeguer third. Jake Dixon nicked 4th place in the last lap, so waving the flag for Britain. Jake, I'm not sure what happened. I think Sam Lowes was maybe 9th, 10th. Didn't read, forgot to check him. But the main thing about Moto 2 is they're the greatest sounding motorsport engine noise of any other sport in the world. You can listen to Moto 2 just for the sound of those Triumph triples. I think they're triples. Technical, it's not my strong subject.
You're not more technical than me.
So Moto 2, not the most exciting races, but it was close. Again, it was close, but not spectacular. But the Moto 3, mayhem. So the Moto 3, we've got this amazing championship building up. There's still 5 races to go. Talk about Moto GP and all these championships. There's still 5 more races. There's plenty of points to be won. We've got these poor Japanese guys sandwiched between 2 Spanish boys. Ayuma Sasaki is the Japanese boys. 3 of them, 9 points apart. And it was the Spanish guy, Jaime Macia, was leading. And the 3rd place was Daniel Holgado, who had actually walked away with the championship early on, got a big lead, but he's dropped back. So the three of them were the big three stars of Moto3 at the moment, as well as this Colombian sensation we've talked about, David Alonso, who's a 19-year-old who started winning from nowhere in his rookie season. So those four riders are really the stars of Moto3 at the moment. But with this championship building up, Sasaki dropped it on the green flag on the out lap. Not even the green flag lap. He dropped on the out lap to go to the grid. And they were having his leathers were being patched up. Jake Dixon was lending him some gloves. The mechanics were rebuilding the bike. All drama on the grid.
Just asking for a friend here, hypothetically speaking, is that worse than crashing a car on a parade up Goodwood Hill?
No.
Didn't think so.
No. But Sasaki had a miserable race. He dropped backwards. He was only about 11th for the grid, I think. Dropped backwards, got no points at all. So then you think the other two will then get loads of points. But instead, up front, there was this manic race. And around this track, for some reason, some tracks seem to feed lunacy. And the riders were just diving up inside. They go into the turn and just apparently sort of come off them. Neil Hodgson talked about it really well again after the race. That's a good insight. But these kids, they sort of see a break. They just come off the brakes for a bit. So they surge past about three of them. And they just try and barge back in. They hit shoulder to shoulder, bike to bike. And two of the biggest culprits who ended up, in fact, second and third at the end, were the aforementioned David Alonso and this guy called David Munoz, who's got a bit of reputation for being wild. And they were just doing each other from corner to corner. Somehow came through to finish second and third. But poor old Masia, who'd led for a while, I think, looked like he was getting loads of points. He got pushed to the back. Holgado got pushed to the back, and then he did a green, overtook on the inside, got a penalty going down the long loop, but didn't take it and took a penalty of 3 seconds at the end, which dropped him from 9th to 16th and no points. So it was chaos. But, Neil was talking after the race that he does, maybe the best rider didn't win, and because it's just who barged best and who was lucky and got away with it when some loony comes up the inside. It was sort of like Russian roulette. Because in fact, the winner out of the blue, who qualified, where have we got his name somewhere? Brazilian guy, his first win, Diego Moreira won. I'm not sure where he's on the grid, but he was about 10th or something. Because qualifying didn't really matter where you qualified in that race. It's just how well you survived the argy-bargy. And it was too much of it, according to Neil. And they talk about giving a bit more power to Moto3 so that the talent can shine a bit more and the crazy guys maybe can't quite keep up. So it was entertaining, of course, to the outsider. But then Neil's upset because if the talent isn't winning, then it's the wrong result for him. So it was interesting stuff.
You say that's entertaining. Now we are moving to British Superbikes, and it was
quick, mate. No, Scott Ogden. Got to mention our Brits. Okay. Don't forget, we're always championing the Brits.
No, absolutely.
Well, I bet Scott Ogden wishes we didn't champion him because he qualified swiftly and crashed again. Josh Watley qualified 18th and finished 22nd. Oh, it's a shame. I keep on hoping that they'll have a good weekend. Now, what were you saying back in the UK?
I was saying back in the UK, it was the final British Superbikes. I mean, bear in mind, we are going into the final weekend of the year, and there's nothing between it. There's a cigarette paper between them. You got Tommy Bridewell and Glenn Irwin. Is that?
Yep, Glenn Irwin.
And well, you could talk us through it, but I will say the whole season finished less than half a point between them. But which way did it go, Tiff, Needell?
It was so tight.
Well, unbelievable. Brands Hatch, I love it. Right?
Yeah, because we had the touring cars there a week ago. Best circuit in Britain, for beautiful track, great race track. And now with the bikes there.
And then in 2 weeks' time, what's there? The most important out of the three?
The KA race featuring Paul Woodman in a KA.
In the Race Logic V-Box KA.
Yeah, I'll be opening my birthday presents on that day. Yeah, it was a hell of a week because, of course, at Donington, these two beer monster Ducati boys were bashing into each other and falling off and breaking down. It was a very controversial weekend. So the tension was high, and the qualifying was in the wet. And Tommy, but they weren't going very well, either of them. But Glenn Irwin had technical problems and only got out at the end and didn't set a time. So Bridewell lined up 7th for race 1 on the Saturday. Of course, this was the day before we're talking about, and Irwin was 17th. But an incredible ride from Irwin. Irwin really was the pace all weekend. He had to be, because Bridewell had about a 9-point lead, I think, 8-point lead after the Donington fiascos. And the first race on the Saturday was a drying line, which on a car you don't worry too much about because the drying line becomes quite wide quite quickly.
Yeah.
On the bikes, going down to Hawthorne's corner at the end of the back straight, and the line was about as wide as 2 feet, and you had to go through that 100 miles an hour, not go 6 inches out.
I don't know how they do it.
I know Irwin somehow got from 17th up to 4th behind Bridewell, who's 3rd. The competition all weekend actually was really between the 2 Ducatis and the 2 Yamahas of O'Halloran and who was the other one? Kyle Ryde. Kyle Ryde was in with a chance of winning the title still. So it was a 4-bike weekend on the pace. And Kyle Ryde won that first race ahead of Jason O'Halloran. And then these 2 beer monsters were going hammer and tongs on this track that was this wide. And Irwin had a dive going got the 3rd place, but then ran wide, and Bridewell came back passing, and everyone was breathing a breath thinking they're going to hit each other. So anyway, that in that way, the Tommy extended his lead slightly on the Saturday on that first race. So come Sunday, unfortunately, in a way, we just knew if he finished right behind Irwin in the 2 races, he would be champion. But it wasn't that simple because the Yamaha boys was in there mixing it up, especially Kyle Ryde. And race 2, actually, Irwin got the win, got to the front. O'Halloran didn't help him because O'Halloran crashed out. So Bridewell cruised up behind him and finished 2nd, which is what Irwin didn't want. He wanted the Yamahas to get between them. And that's what happened in the final race. This is what made the final race just so tense. Because O'Halloran had crashed his bike and he dropped back in the 3rd race. I'm not even sure what happened to him, having had the big shunt in that race too. So Kyle Ryde was out there mixing with these 2. Ryde just wanted to win the race, and he was leading for a bit, and then Irwin got in the front, and it just got silly because the points were coming up quite rightly every lap. And I think when Irwin got to the front with Ryde 2nd and Bridewell 3rd, meant that Irwin would win the championship by 2.5 points. But if Bridewell got past Ryde,
it was so tense.
He'd lose it by 0.5 point. And literally, I think Ryde was leading. I can't remember. It was always a blur. I was on the edge of my seat. I think Irwin just took the lead into Stirling's with about 1 lap to go. And so now, all of a sudden, Bridewell thought he had the champion. Now Bridewell had to get by Ryde on the last lap to make those 2 points. I mean, he did it up at Druids, barge one. It was just so. I mean, Bridewell, perhaps deserved it, but Irwin was really the rider of the day in terms of speed. And the fact he came through from so far back in race 1 was amazing.
Can you imagine having a whole season with 2 or 3 races a weekend, and because it is, and finishing 0.5 point behind? Oh my goodness. Incredible. Of
course, a great weekend, because there's 5 other championships, I think, on that weekend. Yeah. We won and lost, so 4 other championships.
We were kind of invited, but you were away and I was away. So, but next year, look forward to. I want to go to much more BSB. That's really, really good racing.
Yeah,
what a championship!
Big crowd there. Big crowd. Looked a bigger crowd than touring cars, to be honest. I mean, I didn't know the actual numbers, but the banks, it looked full.
Wow. Well, it's a huge following, isn't it? The bike fraternity. Will any of those people go to Moto GP next year?
No, they go to World Superbikes, then they struggle. We've got last year's champion out of the world because the bikes are so different. The UK bikes don't have any of the traction controls and all the fancy scientific stuff, whereas the World Superbikes do. And for a rider that's just a natural rider, suddenly he's not natural anymore. He has to learn how to use tractions and gadgets and whatever they have, anti-stalls and anti-wheelie and all that stuff. So they find it hard to transition to World Superbikes, which seems a bit of a shame. But that's where technology takes away talent.
It doesn't take it away, but I know what you mean. I know we all become a bit soft.
Well, an average technology helps the very good driver equal a brilliant driver. Yeah. You've got to learn how to use the technology, and it's not always easy to adapt to technology.
Good. Right, let's go to probably not the most technical race series in the world, NASCAR.
Yeah, but let's go to Vegas, baby. I mean, I have to talk about another sport very briefly here, because the Needell family had a Vegas sweep. What a night for the Needell family, because there's a certain American football team that the Needell family, mainly Harry Needell, has been promoting. No, the Raiders, of course. Raiders. The Raiders, who are at Vegas. That's their
LA
new home.
Raiders.
They're now the Las Vegas Raiders, not the LA Raiders.
Wow.
They were LA, and then they were, what's that other town they changed to in the middle? North of LA, where they moved for 8 years. We'll forget the name of the town. They're now the Las Vegas, and they had a very tense win.
Henderson,
so the Raiders won.
Palm Springs? Oh, I don't know.
No. God, anyway, forget that for a minute. And then, of course, in the NASCAR, going on at the same time in Las Vegas. But what when Needell's would have done if we'd been on a holiday in Vegas that week? I don't know what we'd have watched. The wife would have been watching a deli. The wife would have been Adele. I would have been at the NASCAR, and Harry would have probably been at the American football. But then, of course, in the NASCAR, the number 5, Kyle Larson, dominated, absolutely, was just on the pace the whole weekend. And of course, this was the first of the 3 races
to as well.
When it cuts. Now, this is we're back to points rule level that cuts it from 8 down to 4. But now he's won in Vegas. He's through. Yeah. So Larson
takes the pressure off.
The last 4, pressure off. It wasn't that exciting a race. He actually nearly binned it because, again, Larson's his biggest self-critic and he makes mistakes. And he always, on interviews, he says, I can't make mistakes, the team. And he got wide and got big oversteer at 160 miles an hour or something. And he kissed the wall with the tail, which normally means the front will come round and smack the wall. But he lit up the rears. I don't know how they're doing at that speed so close. Massively sideways, touched the wall and got it straight. And he lost about 5 places because he flat spotted, damaged the tyres. And so there was a big moment. The Needell family were holding their breaths. But he's soon back at the head of the field, and there was no yellows at the end. That terrible, when you do the last 20 laps, you're terrified some back marker will break down. You have to restart. But there was no restart. And Kyle Larson is through to the final 4, much to relief. So, again, there wasn't much. A lot of tyres exploding. Remember Formula One when they got terrified of a puncture? And if they had one puncture, the Formula One drivers, we won't race until Pirelli changes the tyres, And it's just a part of life in NASCAR. All of the 5 or 6 shunts were thanks to tyres going down, right rear tyre popping. So, good end to the weekend for the Needells. Yeah, Raiders.
Good. And what's coming up next week, Tiff?
Well, the Formula One, we're back with Formula One to the Circuit of America. It's a track I quite enjoy. That's I think the silly first turns, too many of them. The drivers love it, but again, like G-force, all those corners. Because there's only really 1 or 2 overtaking spots again. I suppose that's all right, 2. This has got 2. End of the start, finish straight, and the end of the back straight.
Who are we going to see in the pit lane before? Who's Brundle going to do his chats to? There's going to be all sorts of celebrities there.
Yeah, the celebrities will be there.
Yeah.
We've got a couple of, who's coming back? I think we've got Teo Pourchaire in FP1 and the Alfa Romeo. Oh, they've got Antonio Giovinazzi in the Haas. So what's the point of that? Because teams have to run, these reserve drivers, and they have to run a novice. And I think coming back in Mexico is going to be that Fittipaldi boy that turns up every time as Haas's official reverse.
Yeah, I'm doing the Ford KA endurance stick.
You can't be there,
then. Can't be there.
Yeah. Because the good news is that Ollie Behrman's going to be out in Mexico in a Haas, not in a Haas. Yes, in a Haas. The other thing, of course, going on in Circuit of the Americas is the FIA Academy. The women are out there for the final race. It's been a long time since they finished their championship. So you've got 3 races over the weekend. So hopefully Abby Pulling will finally get a win. We've been waiting all year. Our British girl that was doing so well had a terrible season.
She did so well in W Series.
I know. It's been dominated by the Spanish girl, Marta Garcia. But now there's 3 more races for Abby Pulling, hopefully, maybe to have a win. Then Moto GP go to the magnificent Phillip Island circuit in Australia. It's quite fun. I was looking on the map of Phillip Island. It's just below Melbourne. It's about the size of the Isle of Wight. It looks about Isle of Wight size. And in the middle of the north, the biggest town is, of course, named Isle of Wight. Are you there? North, biggest town. Cows. It is. Wow. It's called Cows. So they're on Phillip Island, Moto GP. Great. Really looking forward to that. Moto 3 will be spectacular. Big slipstreaming circuit. That is fantastic to watch. British GT at home, Donington, the British GT finale to see who's going to win that. That should be spectacular. So you want to go and watch some fabulous GT racing. Donington is the place to be. And NASCAR have the second of the 3 races to decide the final 4 at Homestead. Another 1.5 mile oval.
Lovely. So if you've listened this long, thank you very much. Leave a comment below and let us know what the best F1 circuit is to race in your opinion. So, because
yes, best racing. So I'll think about this. We can talk about this another time as well.
Okay.
Good idea.
Thanks for listening, watching, and
tell some friends to subscribe, will you? For goodness' sake.
We need some views. See you next week.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.